Zayden O'Connell stared at the glowing screen of his phone, one eyebrow raised as he hovered his thumb over a profile photo of a woman with wild curls, a paint-smeared apron, and the kind of smile that didn't look posed. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered under his breath, then swiped right. He hadn't planned on joining a dating app. His assistant had signed him up on a dare, laughing as she scrolled past influencer after influencer. "You need to meet someone normal for once," she told him. "Someone who doesn't care that you own half of Manhattan." So now here he was, in a penthouse worth more than most people's lifetime income, swiping through strangers while sipping 100-year-old scotch. It felt ridiculous, until Nahla Greene, her bio was short. Painter, coffee addict. Not into games unless it's Scrabble. The next morning, Zayden walked into a boardroom full of executives arguing over a merger proposal, but his head wasn't in it. Not really. He kept thinking about the girl with the paint on her hands and the kind of eyes that looked like they'd actually seen things. Felt things. 3 days later, in a quiet cafe in Brooklyn that had no valet service, no crystal chandeliers, no one who recognized his face, he met her. "You actually showed," Nahla said, setting down her sketchbook. She wore a faded denim jacket and had a coffee cup balanced on top of a napkin doodle. "I figured you'd be one of those guys who lies in his profile and turns out to be a gym teacher with 5 kids. Zayden chuckled. "What gave you the impression I wasn't a gym teacher?" She tilted her head. "You have the posture of someone who's either been in the military or spends a lot of time yelling at people in suits." "Guilty," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. She didn't ask about his job. She didn't ask about money. Instead, she asked about his favorite book, the last time he cried, and what he'd do if he weren't afraid of failing. No one ever asked Zayden O'Connell things like that. By the end of the night, he'd walked her home. She lived above a bakery with a leaky roof and a front door that stuck. When she turned to him on the stoop, she smiled in a way that made his heart trip over itself. "I had fun," she said. "Me too. You're weird. You're not the first to say that. I like it." He left with her laughter still echoing in his ears. They started seeing each other more, first weekly, then every other day. Then, suddenly, it felt wrong to go a day without hearing her voice. She showed him her world. Art studios that smelled like turpentine, late-night diners with jukeboxes, rooftops where she painted the sky while he held her coffee. He didn't tell her about the money, not yet. He didn't know how to bring it up without ruining everything. Instead, he listened. He asked questions. He watched her light up when she talked about her gallery dreams and how her mom used to tell her stories while braiding her hair. "You ever think about the future?" she asked one night, curled up beside him on his couch. "Every day," he said. "But lately it looks different." She looked up, eyes soft. "Different how?" He hesitated. "It has you in it." For a second, she didn't answer, then she leaned in and pressed her lips to his. He was lost. A few weeks later, she invited him to a local art show where one of her pieces was being displayed. He arrived late, thanks to a crisis at one of his companies, and found her standing alone in the corner, arms folded, trying to look like she didn't care. "I thought you weren't coming," she said as he approached. "I'm here," he said, then handed her a velvet box. She blinked. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside was a brush antique, gold-trimmed, engraved with her initials. "Zayden, this is..." Her voice cracked. "I bought the gallery that rejected your last submission," he said quietly. "You own it now, it's yours." Her mouth parted. "You what?" "I wanted you to have a place where your art would always have a home." She stared at him, eyes wide. "Zayden, who are you?" he exhaled. "I should have told you sooner. My name's Zayden O'Connell. I run a few companies." She raised an eyebrow. "A few," he nodded. "I'm a billionaire." She stared at him for a long moment, then she stepped back. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want that to be what you saw first. I didn't need you to buy me a gallery, I know, but I wanted to, because I believe in you, and I wanted you to believe that I'm not just some guy in a suit." She looked away. "I need some air." Zayden didn't follow her. He let her go. It was 2 days before he heard from her again. She showed up at his building, hair windblown, eyes fierce. "Next time," she said, "don't wait until I'm standing in a crowd of people to drop a bomb like that." He opened his mouth, but she cut him off. "I'm still mad, but I'm more confused than anything. I'll tell you everything, no more hiding," she nodded slowly. "Good. Because I'm not in love with your money," he stepped closer. "Then what are you in love with?" she swallowed. "You, maybe, I don't know, but I'm scared, Zayden." He cupped her face gently. "Me too. But I've never been more sure about anything in my life." She rested her forehead against his chest. "I need time, you've got it." They didn't rush. They kept going to diners, kept painting on rooftops. Sometimes they argued, sometimes they laughed so hard they cried, but slowly the fear faded. One night she woke up to find her entire tiny apartment filled with easels, blank canvases, and a note. "Paint anything. Paint everything. I'm not going anywhere," she called him. "You filled my apartment with art supplies. Thought you could use a bigger canvas. You're insane, insanely in love with you." She didn't say it back that night, but she would. Nahla hadn't meant to fall in love with someone like Zayden O'Connell. She'd never even imagined a man like him outside the pages of a novel, sharp-eyed, endlessly composed, and with a voice that could undo her resolve in 3 syllables. But the part that undid her most wasn't his looks. It was the way he listened, like she was the only thing worth hearing in a room full of noise, which made it harder to reconcile the truth. He was a billionaire. She hadn't spoken that word aloud yet. It caught in her throat every time she thought about it. She'd grown up in a 3rd-floor apartment with radiators that hissed all winter and a single window unit that groaned through the summer. Her mother had raised her on a waitress's salary and watercolor dreams. There were no yachts in her childhood, no private jets or penthouses. Just rent due on the 1st and hope to make it to the 15th. And now she found herself tangled up with a man whose world operated on a scale she couldn't fathom. She didn't tell anyone about him. Not yet. Not her best friend, not her coworkers at the studio where she taught weekend art classes. Not even her landlord, who always asked about the man who sometimes dropped her off in a glossy black car at odd hours of the night. She wasn't ready for the questions. She wasn't ready for the mirror they might hold up to the parts of her that still didn't feel worthy. Zayden, for his part, never pushed. He didn't bring her to charity galas or boardroom dinners. He didn't drape her in designer clothes or try to turn her into someone she wasn't. Instead, he left notes tucked into her sketchbook, quiet, thoughtful things like, "I'd give anything to see the world the way you paint it." Or he'd send her playlists filled with cello music, because he remembered she once said it helped her focus. One afternoon, she found herself standing in the middle of a sunlit penthouse kitchen, watching him cook. "You're joking," she said, arms folded as he cracked an egg with startling precision. "I'm completely serious," he replied, reaching for a pan. "You think I got through college eating catered meals? You went to college, Columbia, business and economics, minor in architecture," she blinked. "So you're one of those overachievers," he glanced at her, amused. "Only when I want something badly enough." She narrowed her eyes. "And what do you want now?" His gaze didn't waver. "You." She looked away, heat blooming in her chest. "You're ridiculous, maybe, but I'm also making you the best omelet you've ever had." It was infuriatingly true. Later that evening, she wandered into the glass-walled room at the back of the penthouse, where the skyline stretched like a painted backdrop. He joined her, 2 glasses of wine in hand. "You ever feel like you're standing in a life that doesn't belong to you?" she asked, not looking at him. "Yes. Every day until I met you." She turned to him. "Why me, Zayden? You could be with anyone. I paint for a living and my car door only opens if you kick it just right." He walked closer, setting both glasses on the windowsill. "Do you think I care about any of that? I think it should matter that I don't belong in your world." He reached for her hand. "Then I'll build one where you do." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped into him, resting her head against his shoulder. "You make it really hard not to fall for you. I'm counting on it." The next week, he invited her to a private dinner, no press, No photographers, just a rooftop overlooking the Hudson with a grand piano, a string quartet, and a table set for two beneath a canopy of soft lights. She wore a simple black dress she'd borrowed from a friend. He wore a tailored suit that looked like it belonged in a magazine. "Tell me something I don't know about you," she said, twirling a piece of pasta with her fork. Zayden leaned back. "I once got kicked out of a meeting because I told a board member that his tie looked like it had lost a fight with a curtain," she laughed. "You didn't." "I did. He wasn't amused. You're not what I expected." He met her gaze. "Neither are you." The music shifted and he stood, extending a hand. "Dance with me," she hesitated. "There's no one else up here." "Exactly." She let him pull her close. His hand settled on her waist, his touch light but certain. They swayed slowly, the city spinning around them in a blur of light and sound. "I think I'm scared of what happens next," she whispered. Zayden's voice was barely audible. "Then let me go first." She leaned back just enough to see his face. "What do you mean, I love you?" She froze. "I didn't plan to," he said, voice steady. "But it happened. Somewhere between your terrible coffee preferences and the way you talk to your paintings like they're people." She blinked, stunned. "You don't have to say it back," he added. "Not until you're ready." "I don't know if I am," she admitted. "I want to be, but it's a lot. I know." She reached up, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "But I'm not walking away." That night, when they returned to his penthouse, he didn't try to kiss her. Instead, he wrapped her in a blanket and let her fall asleep against his chest, her breath slow and even, her hand curled loosely around his. Nahla's world kept shifting. The gallery he'd given her became a cornerstone of the neighborhood. Artists she'd admired for years reached out, wanting to display their work. She hired a small staff, curated her first showcase, and found herself standing before a full room on opening night, wondering how her life had pivoted so completely. Zayden stood in the back, watching her. He didn't need to be the center of attention. He never did, but she saw the way his expression softened when she smiled. After the crowd thinned, he approached her with something in his hand. "I know you said no gifts tonight," he said, "but I couldn't help myself." She raised an eyebrow. "Zayden, it's not a car or anything that needs a security deposit." She took the envelope cautiously, opening it to find a letter. Handwritten? She read the first line, then the second. Her throat tightened as she realized it was a letter from her mother, copied word for word from the journal she'd kept growing up, the one she thought was lost in the fire that had destroyed their old home. "How did you?" "I tracked it down." "The original was gone, but a neighbor of yours had scanned some pages years ago. I had someone piece it together." Her eyes brimmed. "You didn't have to do this. I wanted you to remember where you started and to see how far you've come." She hugged him, burying her face in his neck. "You make it really hard not to love you. Then don't fight it." She pulled back just enough to kiss him. It wasn't the first time, but it was the first time she meant it with every part of her. She didn't say the words yet, but she would. The first time Nahla set foot in Zayden's Vermont estate, she stopped just inside the entryway, her breath catching as she looked up. The ceiling soared overhead, wooden beams arched like a cathedral, and a massive stone fireplace crackled at the far end. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a snow-covered forest where the last light of day flickered through trees heavy with ice. Zayden watched her from beside the door, his coat still damp with sleet. "It's not as impressive when the power goes out," he said, brushing snow off his shoulders. She turned slowly, her voice dry. "You brought me to a Hallmark movie set. I figured it was safer than throwing you into another rooftop dinner with violins. Thought I'd try something less intimidating. I'm still recovering from the piano." He gave a quiet laugh as he walked past her, tossing his gloves onto a side table. "You can yell at me later. For now, let's get warm." The weekend had been his idea. She'd been working nonstop managing the gallery, prepping a new exhibit, juggling artists who changed their minds every other hour, and he'd shown up at her apartment with a travel bag and a plane ticket. "You need to breathe," he'd said, ignoring her protests. "And I need to be somewhere you're not answering emails every 5 minutes." Now, Deep in the woods and miles from cell reception, she had no excuse not to exhale. She found him in the kitchen, sleeves pushed up, hands dusted with flour. "You bake?" she asked, eyebrows raised. "I survive," he replied. "Barely, but I figured you deserved something fresh. You know there's a chef's kitchen in here that looks like it's never been touched." "That's because it hasn't been. My mother designed this house. She liked the idea of rustic comfort, but she never used it once. Preferred her penthouse in Tribeca." Nahla leaned against the counter, watching him knead dough. "You don't talk about her much." He didn't look up. "She passed when I was 23, cancer, fast. We didn't have time to fix things." She stepped closer. "You don't have to, I want to." His hands moved slower now. "She was brilliant, cold sometimes, but brilliant. She built half of O'Connell Holdings with my father. When he died, she ran it alone. People underestimated her, so she made sure they regretted it." "Sounds like someone I know," Nahla said softly. He gave her a glance, and this time the edge in his voice softened. "I've spent most of my life trying to be someone she'd be proud of, but I don't think she'd ever understand you. And that used to terrify me. But not anymore." He met her eyes. "No, because I know she'd see the way I look at you." That night, after a dinner of oddly shaped but surprisingly delicious hand-rolled pasta, they curled up on the couch under an old quilt that smelled faintly of cedar. Outside, snow fell in thick, lazy flakes. Inside, the fire snapped and hissed. Nahla traced her fingers along the edge of a photo frame on the side table. It held a black and white picture of a young boy beside a woman with sharp eyes and a guarded smile. "She looks like she didn't smile easily." "She didn't," he said. "But when she did, it meant something." "Is that why you don't show your cards unless you're sure?" Zayden turned his head, studying her. "I've never been more sure of anything." She drew in a slow breath. "You know I still have doubts, right, about all of this? I don't expect you not to. It's not that I don't trust you, it's that I've never been in something that felt so much bigger than me." He reached for her hand, his thumb brushing against her wrist. "Then let it be bigger. Let it swallow us both." They kissed slowly, the kind of kiss that didn't rush to prove anything, the kind that asked for nothing but gave everything. The next morning, Nahla found him outside, standing at the edge of the frozen lake behind the house. He wore a heavy wool coat, his breath forming clouds as he stared out over the ice. "We could live out here," he said when he heard her approaching. "Disappear, start over." "You'd last 2 weeks," she said, laughing. "No cell service, no boardrooms, no espresso machines." "You'd be surprised," he said, glancing at her. "I've been thinking about what it would mean to step back, not forever, just enough. Are you serious? I've made more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But what we have, that's the first thing in years that doesn't feel transactional. Zayden, your empire doesn't run itself. I'd still be involved, but I could restructure, delegate more, create space." "For what?" He stepped closer. "For a life with you." She swallowed hard. "You've never said anything like that before." "I've never felt it before." They walked the snowy path back toward the house, silence stretching between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It pulsed with something deeper. That evening, as they sat inside beside the fire, Zayden stood suddenly and disappeared into the study. When he returned, he held a small velvet box. Nahla blinked. "What are you doing?" He didn't kneel. He didn't give a speech. He sat beside her, opened the box, and let her see. Inside was a ring, platinum band. One center diamond flanked by 2 smaller sapphires, elegant but understated. "I didn't want this to be grand," he said. "I didn't want violins or helicopters or a crowd full of people filming it on their phones. I just wanted you to know that everything I've built, every decision I've made has led me here." She stared down at the ring, her throat tightening. "You don't have to answer tonight," he added quickly. "But I need you to know that it's what I want for the rest of my life." Her hands trembled slightly as she closed the box, holding it gently like it was made of glass. She looked at him. "Ask me anyway," he blinked. "Nahla, ask me properly," she said, voice steadier now. "Say the words." He took a breath, then reached for her hand. "Nahla Greene, will you marry me?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." He let out a slow, stunned breath, then laughed fully deeply. She'd never heard that sound from him before. It stripped away all the polish and left something raw and real. He slid the ring onto her finger, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, "You're not allowed to disappear into the woods and become a recluse, you know? I'll only do it if you come with me." They stayed up late that night, talking about everything and nothing, not the wedding, not the future, just them, who they were, who they'd become. Later, as Nahla stood brushing her teeth, Zayden leaned against the bathroom doorway, arms crossed. "You know, I never believed in fate," he said. She rinsed and looked at him, puzzled. "And now? I think maybe fate just needed a dating app." She laughed, mouth full of toothpaste. Romantic? Hey, it worked. And it had. The first time Nahla walked into the O'Connell Tower as Zayden's fiancée, she wore her paint-stained sneakers. The security guard at the front desk blinked in confusion as she stepped past the marble columns and into the gold-trimmed elevator. She caught her reflection in the mirror-lined walls. The ring on her finger glittered like it hadn't quite settled into reality. On the top floor, the elevator doors opened into Zayden's office, sleek, glass-walled, and humming with quiet power. He looked up from a conference table where a dozen executives sat silently and without hesitation stood and walked straight toward her. "I didn't mean to interrupt," she said, voice low. "You didn't." He guided her to the side with a hand at the small of her back, then turned to his team. "Take a 10-minute break." As the room emptied, she glanced around. "This place feels like something out of a political thriller." "I was going for organized intimidation," he said. "Did I hit the mark?" "You nailed it." He studied her face. "Something wrong?" She hesitated, then pulled a folded envelope from her pocket. "I got a letter from the gallery's landlord. They've had an offer to buy the entire block. If I can't match it, they're selling." Zayden's expression shifted, but he didn't reach for his phone or offer to fix it. Instead, he asked, "What do you want to do?" "I want to fight for it, but I don't want your money." "I didn't offer." "You were about to," he nodded slowly. "I want to help, but I don't want to take this from you, so tell me what you need." She exhaled, shoulders relaxing slightly. "I need to figure out how to raise $5 million in less than 2 months. Then let's build a plan. No shortcuts, no checks from me, just strategy." She reached for his hand. "You really mean that? I never put my name on anything I don't believe in." "And I believe in you." Over the next few weeks, Nahla threw herself into saving the gallery. She organized fundraisers, hosted artist auctions, and called in every favor she'd ever earned. Zayden, true to his word, never once offered to bankroll the effort. But he did show up to every event, every late-night planning session, every moment when she doubted herself. One night she found him in her studio, sleeves rolled up, helping hang a series of paintings for a pop-up show. As he adjusted a frame, she leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "You ever think about how weird this is?" she asked. He glanced over. "That I'm hanging art for a fundraiser I'm not allowed to pay for. That a billionaire is covered in paint flecks and taking orders from a woman who once lived in a walk-up with no hot water." He stepped back from the canvas and gave her a look that was all steel and sincerity. "I never cared where you came from, only where you're going. And if I fail, then we fail together." The night of the final auction, the gallery overflowed with people. Artists, collectors, local business owners, everyone showed up. Nahla gave a speech that left her voice shaking and her palms damp, but when she met Zayden's gaze across the room, she stood a little taller. By the end of the night, they were close, just under 500,000 short. Nahla paced behind the curtain, her chest tight. "We were so close." Zayden stood nearby, arms folded. "You did something incredible. I lost." "No," he said gently. "You reminded an entire city that art matters, that your voice matters. That's not a loss." Her phone buzzed. She glanced down, then blinked. The landlord just called. The developer pulled their offer. "What?" She looked up, stunned. Apparently they saw the fundraiser. "Said it'd be bad PR to go through with the deal." Zayden's brow raised slightly, but he only said, "So you win." Later that night, as they stood together beneath the gallery's skylight, she turned to him and said, "You stayed out of it, didn't you?" "I give them nothing," he said. "But I might have made a few calls, quiet ones." She narrowed her eyes. "Zayden, I didn't offer money, I didn't threaten anything, I just reminded them that the city doesn't need another luxury condo, it needs this place." She stepped closer, voice soft. "Thank you." He reached for her hand. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because it's what she would have done. She, my mother." Nahla's eyes widened. She grew up in Queens. First job was sweeping floors in a textile factory. She knew what it meant to fight for a dream. "I think she would have liked this place." That night, they walked the quiet streets of Soho hand in hand. No drivers, no security, just the city breathing around them. "You ever think about what kind of wedding you want?" he asked casually. She laughed. "Honestly, I used to think I didn't want one at all. And now, I think I want something real, not big, not flashy, just something that feels like us." He nodded. "Then that's what we'll do." But when the wedding came, it was neither small nor flashy, it was something else entirely. They married in the Brooklyn Botanic Garden, beneath a canopy of wisteria and soft light. No press. Just friends, family, and a few stunned guests who still couldn't believe Zayden O'Connell had voluntarily stepped away from board meetings to help arrange folding chairs. Nahla wore a dress that looked like it had been cut from moonlight. Zayden wore a charcoal suit with no tie, his hair a little messier than usual. They stood beneath the trees, their hands clasped, as a quiet wind stirred the leaves above them. When the officiant asked for vows, Zayden didn't reach for his pocket. He didn't need notes. "I used to think love was a risk I couldn't afford, that if I let someone in, everything I built would start to crumble. But then I met you. And I realized the only thing that ever mattered was building something we could live inside together." Nahla didn't cry, not then. She waited until she spoke. "I thought I was supposed to fit into someone else's life, that I had to change to be loved, but you never asked me to shift. You just stood still and let me find my way to you." They kissed, and the garden erupted in applause. At the reception, Zayden's assistant pulled him aside. "Sir," she said, handing him a tablet, "we finalized the restructuring. You can step back fully by next month." He glanced across the lawn, where Nahla was laughing with her best friend, barefoot and holding a slice of cake. "Make it happen," he said. That night, as they stood on the balcony of their new home, a brownstone they'd renovated together, brick by brick, Nahla leaned against the railing, gazing out at the city. "We're different now," she said. "We're better." She turned. "You know, this all started because of a swipe." He stepped behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. "I didn't swipe right because of your photo. No, I swiped because you were the only person who didn't sound like they were auditioning for a reality show." She laughed. "And now I'm your wife." He kissed her shoulder. "The best decision I ever made." They stood there in silence, the kind that comes only when there's nothing left to prove. And somewhere, beneath the hum of the city, the life they'd built together kept unfolding, one brushstroke, one choice, one impossible, undeniable truth at a time. He tried online dating. He never thought the girl he swiped right on would become his wife, but she had. And it was everything. The sun filtered through the tall windows of the brownstone kitchen, casting a golden wash across the countertops. Nahla stood barefoot on the cool tile, holding a mug of tea with both hands, her engagement ring catching the light like it belonged there. The quiet of the morning wrapped around her like a familiar sweater, peaceful, steady, and settled. Zayden walked in, still drying his hair with a towel. His shirt clung slightly from the shower, sleeves rolled to the elbows. He kissed the top of her head without a word and moved to the coffee machine. "You have paint in your hair," he said casually as he reached for a cup. "I do not," she replied, then reached up and felt it. "Okay, maybe I do, it's from the new mural." "The scaffolding tried to kill me." He leaned against the counter. "You say that like it's the first time. This one was personal." She smiled, sipping her tea. "It's going on the wall across from the community center, commissioned by the city." He raised an eyebrow. "So you're officially a public artist now," she shrugged. It's weird. I used to think I'd be happy if I could just get one piece into a gallery. Now there's a 12-foot version of my work getting sealed into a brick wall. He watched her for a moment. You never think small. I used to. She set her cup down and walked over to him. Then some maniac showed up in my life and kept insisting I could do more. I only told you what you already knew. No. You told me what I was too scared to say out loud. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her neck. You terrify me sometimes. She laughed into his shoulder. Why? Because I have everything I ever wanted and now I can't imagine losing any of it. Then stop imagining it. She looked up at him, fingertips brushing his jaw. You built an empire, Zayden, but you gave me the part of you that wasn't built for anyone else. That means more than the penthouse or the jet or the name. He kissed her slowly, like he was memorizing the taste of her words. Let's never let this get ordinary, agreed, but you're still doing the dishes. Later that afternoon, they walked hand in hand to the gallery. The street had been blocked off for the unveiling of the mural, her mural. Crowds had already gathered. Families, couples, curious tourists, and a few reporters who lingered politely at the edge. The mayor gave a brief speech, but Nahla barely heard any of it. She was too focused on the wide cloth covering the wall across from the center, her heart beating like it hadn't gotten the message that she'd already made it. When the fabric dropped, a hush fell over the crowd. The mural was bold, vivid colors, sweeping brushwork, filled with faces from the neighborhood she'd sketched in quiet corners and translated into larger-than-life expressions of resilience, joy, and complexity. In the middle stood a woman holding a paintbrush, her expression fierce and unyielding. Around her a city bloomed, gasps rippled. Then applause, someone behind Nahla whispered, "That's her, the artist." She didn't turn. She just stared at the wall, blinking against sudden tears. Zayden stepped closer. "You okay?" She nodded. "I didn't expect to feel this much. You worked for this. I fought for it. And you won." That night back at the brownstone, they curled up in the living room. The fire crackled low and a bottle of champagne stood half empty on the floor beside them. Nahla glanced at the box in her lap. "You didn't have to do this." "I know," Zayden said, "but I wanted to mark the day." She opened the lid, revealing a delicate pendant shaped like a brushstroke, cast in rose gold. On the back, engraved in fine script, were the words, "You were always the masterpiece." Her throat tightened. "Zayden." He kissed her temple. "There's no gallery big enough to hold what you've done, but I figured you could wear it close." "I love you," she said into his chest. "I know, but I never get tired of hearing it." Weeks passed. Spring crept into the city, dressing the brownstone's narrow garden in fresh green. Nahla spent her days rotating between mural work, gallery management, and sitting on the advisory board for a new arts initiative Zayden had quietly helped fund under her name. One evening, as she stood on the balcony watering a small box of herbs she'd planted in a fit of optimism, Zayden came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Come away with me," he said. She turned. "Where?" "Anywhere, everywhere. I want to take a break." "Just us? You're serious?" "I already handed off 2 of my companies to their new CEOs. I'm not joking when I say I'm ready to live differently." She studied his face. "You're not the man I met in that cafe, you know," he smiled. "I was never really that man. I just didn't know it yet." They left 2 days later with no itinerary and 2 packed suitcases. Paris, Santorini, Kyoto, Marrakesh, they drifted through cities like lovers in a storybook, waking up late, sketching in cafes, losing track of time on beaches and under lantern-lit skies. They danced in a plaza in Lisbon, adopted a stray cat in Florence and found it a home before they left, got lost in a souk in Morocco and ended up sharing mint tea with a family who barely spoke English but understood love when they saw it. Zayden carried a camera everywhere, documenting everything but always lingering longest on her. She painted small canvases in hotel rooms and mailed them home one by one, signing the backs with tiny hearts. In the soft quiet of Tokyo's gardens, he turned to her on a wooden bridge and said, "We could stay, start over here." She laughed, pressing her face to his chest. And lose the gallery, my mural, our cat. I forgot about the cat, he muttered. They returned home 3 months later, sun-kissed and changed. The brownstone welcomed them like it had been waiting. Letters stacked neatly on the table. The scent of lavender from the neighbor's window box drifting in. Zayden dropped his bag and pulled her close. We made it back. Did you think we wouldn't? No, but I like the feeling of coming home, she smiled. We're not done building, are we? Never, but we're doing it on our terms now. A year passed. The gallery expanded organically under Nahla's steady hand. She curated exhibits that told stories no one else was telling. Zayden worked less but more meaningfully. He built a foundation for emerging artists, funded anonymously, and sat in the back of every exhibit opening with a quiet pride that didn't need recognition. They didn't rush the wedding. When it came, it was private, tucked in the garden behind the brownstone, under strings of lights and the gentle rustle of leaves. Just her mother's old friend officiating, a few chairs, and the city humming softly beyond the fence. Nahla wore a dress she'd sewn accents into herself, small painted patches hidden in the lining, like secrets only she knew. Zayden wore no tie, just a boutonniere plucked from their tiny herb garden. They said their vows surrounded by the life they'd built, imperfect and beautiful. I used to think love was a destination, Nahla whispered as they danced under the stars. But it's not, it's the road. Zayden kissed her hand, then I'm never stepping off it. They didn't need another ring, another proposal, or another promise. They had everything they needed. And it was real.